I live in a small apartment with my 7-year-old daughter, Mina. I divorced my ex-husband 5 years ago. The reason was domestic violence. Before we got married, I had sensed that he occasionally had a rough temperament, but my feelings for him took precedence, and I never imagined it would escalate to physical abuse. I still bear scars from the injuries he inflicted, and I feel pain in my heart whenever I remember those times. However, the only good thing that came out of that marriage is Mina. Fortunately, my ex-husband never harmed her, and she has grown into a straight, bright, and kind child. One day, just before Mina returned from elementary school, I received a call from her teacher.
I'm sorry to say that today, Mina got into a fight with a classmate.
I was very surprised to hear that. Mina is very gentle, and even if something bothers her, she doesn't usually speak out.
The other child wasn't hurt, but Mina ended up with a large scratch on her cheek.
The teacher apologized over the phone, though Mina wouldn't tell her the reason of the fight.
I'm sorry my daughter caused a disturbance.
I responded and then hung up, waiting for Mina to come home. What could have made her so angry? A few minutes later, Mina came home with a bandage on her cheek, just as the teacher had said.
Welcome back, Mina.
When I greeted her, she smiled as usual and said,
I'm home.
Then went to put her backpack in her room. After washing her hands and gargling, she came into the living room and I asked,
What happened to your cheek?
Mina looked away from me and said,
I fell down.
It was the first time Mina had ever lied to me. Careful not to hurt her, I asked.
Did you really get into a fight with a friend? The teacher called earlier.
Mina looked confused and fell silent.
I want to understand why you felt upset, Mina.
Finally, she looked up, ready to talk. Then she went to her room and came back with a drawing.
This is a picture of you, Mom.
Showing a colorful flower field with a smiling woman.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I said as I took it, but Mina continued.
Today was supposed to be about drawing a picture of Dad for Father's Day.
Hearing that, I immediately felt guilty. For Mina, who doesn't have a father, Father's Day must feel lonely, and I understood that painfully well.
Then, Leah said it was weird to draw a picture of Mom on Father's Day. I don't have a dad, so I drew my favorite mom. And she said I don't have a dad because of the fight between the two. She also said it's Mom's fault that I don't have a dad.
I couldn't deny that. I had taken her father away from her to protect myself. That was the truth. But Mina quickly reassured me.
I'm not pitiful. Even if I don't have a dad, I have you, Mom. I hated Leah for speaking badly about you. She doesn't even know you, though. You are my pride and joy.
Before she finished speaking, she started crying. It wasn't just about being insulted herself. She was upset because someone had spoken ill of me.
Mina, thank you.
I hugged her as she cried. I thought she was still so young and just a child, but Mina had become a strong person who could feel anger on behalf of others. I was so happy to know that. And I felt quite embarrassed because I had been just the opposite when I was young. I was also raised by a single mother. But I never managed to speak such warm words to my mother. My parents divorced when I was in the 5th grade of elementary school. My mother never told me the reason, so I still don't know. I don't know what happened between them, but at least to me, my father was kind, funny, warm, and someone I truly loved. So, I couldn't easily accept suddenly losing him like that. Because of that, I couldn't be honest with my mother, and as I moved up through middle and high school, I became more and more rebellious against her. I barely came home at night and lashed out at my worried mother. In high school, when a classmate said,
You behaved badly because you were poorly brought up without a father.
I took it out on her when I got home.
It's all your fault I turned out like this.
But my mom never got angry, she just said.
I'm sorry.
The divorce was a problem between both my parents, not just my mom's fault. Now that I've been through a divorce myself, I understand that, but I couldn't see it back then. By my senior year of high school, I had calmed down and started job hunting. There was no money for college, and I wanted to be independent as soon as possible. Although my mom had always encouraged me to pursue further education. In the end, I got a job as an administrative assistant at a daycare. The pay wasn't great, but I was happy to be living on my own earnings, and I couldn't see anything else. I didn't even notice that my mom was falling ill. By the time I realized, it was too late. She was diagnosed with a terminal illness and had to be hospitalized. It was then that I began to regret how I had treated her. As a token of atonement and to spend as much time with her as possible, I visited her every day after work. Although I had been a rebellious daughter, my mom seemed happy and surprised by my change. I tried to act cheerful so she wouldn't worry, but one day, I couldn't hold back my feelings anymore.
I'm sorry for always being rebellious and undutiful. I'm really sorry.
I said through tears. But my mom said, with a calm smile,
No, I'm happy as long as you're living well. No matter what, you're my daughter. And that doesn't change.
For the first time, I truly felt how deeply my mother had always loved me with a generous heart. It was too late to realize it. How precious it was to have someone who loved you unconditionally. I couldn't help but feeling a pain in my chest. Then, she gave me something.
Here. This is the most precious thing to me other than you.
It was a small, polished jewelry box.
I want you to have it.
When I opened the box, there was a ring inside. An antique-style ring with a smooth, shining gem.
Yeah, thank you. I'll cherish it.
3 days after giving me the ring, my mother passed away. I've never worn it because it feels too precious, but I still look at it sometimes and draw strength from it. Because my mom worked hard, I should too. I would make sure to protect Mina. That's how I felt. But one day, an unexpected situation arose. At the end of the month, when I went to withdraw the child support usually deposited by my ex-husband, the money that should have been there wasn't in my account. During our divorce, we had agreed that he wouldn't pay alimony, but he would provide child support for Mina. Maybe he didn't set up the withdrawal? Or he forgot to transfer it. Thinking that, I unusually called my ex-husband, but I did this time. However,
The number you have dialed is not in service.
a cold automated message echoed in my mind.
What happened?
I was stunned. I've been working in the same daycare office since graduating high school, but the pay is still pretty low. Even with the child support from my ex-husband, it's a struggle to make ends meet daily. Expenses for my daughter's school are mounting, from textbooks to events. Hoping for some mistake, I scrimped through 1 month, but when the next month's end came, the child support still hadn't been deposited. I don't know my ex-husband's current address, and we have no mutual acquaintances. He seems to have moved, with no way to contact him. And the child support was a verbal agreement, so I had no legal standing.
I've been abandoned.
I felt pathetic and utterly lost. Although we couldn't enjoy sumptuous meals from the beginning, our meals at home became even more modest than before. But Mina was always eating with a smile, saying,
Delicious.
Her smile had been a huge relief, but to protect it, I knew I had to do something. My anxiety grew stronger. Then, when Mina came home one day with holes in her sneakers, I felt financially stuck, not being able to afford even new shoes for her.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I was forced into a corner and chose the last resort I had hoped to avoid. It was to sell my mother's heirloom ring. It was old, and I didn't know how much it was worth, but the gem on top was real. It might fetch enough to buy her new shoes. Holding on to that hope, I visited a local pawn shop. It was a ring my mother had cherished. I really didn't want to sell it. But
Mom would understand, right? She'd tell me to protect my daughter, right?
I reassured myself as I handed the ring to the male clerk at the pawn shop. My hands were trembling, and the clerk asked,
Are you sure about this?
I couldn't answer immediately but finally said,
Yes. Please take it.
telling myself,
I am my mother's daughter, but I'm also Mina's mother. This is the best choice.
All right. Let me take a look.
the clerk said quietly, examining the ring with a small magnifying glass. How much time had passed? Maybe 10 minutes? Probably more. The clerk was silent as he looked at the ring. I thought,
It takes so long.
and I was surprised to see his face. Tears were welling up in his eyes.
Excuse me, anything wrong?
The clerk snapped back to reality, wiped his tears with a tissue nearby, and pulled out a form to fill, asking,
Could I have your name?
Mary Peterson.
As I replied, the clerk didn't write anything down but gently put the pen down. Then, sighing deeply, he slowly shifted his gaze to me and asked.
May I ask you something?
I suddenly felt very anxious, as if I had done something terribly wrong.
Yes.
Where did this come from?
Well, it's an heirloom from my mother. She gave it to me just before she passed away, saying it was something she cherished and wanted me to have.
Saying it out loud made my heart ache again. But I couldn't back down now.
I see.
After a moment of silence, the clerk said,
Could you wait a moment, please?
and went to the back of the shop. He returned quickly with a small jewelry box and took out a ring.
Actually, I also have a precious ring too, handed down to me by my late brother.
I was shocked to see the ring he pulled out. It looked incredibly similar to the one I inherited from my mother.
My brother was a jeweler, but he fell in his 20s. He passed away 20 years ago. But knowing his time was limited, he spent even more time than usual crafting something. It was 2 rings, one for his wife and another for his only daughter.
The clerk then asked,
Have you ever looked inside your mother's ring?
Yes, I have.
Inside, my mother's name was engraved in small letters. Hearing that, the clerk handed me another ring. As I examined it, I saw "For Mary" engraved inside.
Could it be? No way.
Doubtfully, I looked at the clerk as he said,
Yes, this is the ring my brother made as his last work for his daughter, you.
Excuse me? My father? But
I couldn't comprehend it. Such a miraculous coincidence, could it be? Though my mother had mentioned they divorced, she never said my father was sick. Nor had I ever heard that he was a jeweler. As I stood there confused, the clerk continued.
My brother was both an office worker and a jeweler, so it's natural you wouldn't know since you were very young. Our family has run a small jewelry and pawn shop for generations. I was not capable as my brother, so now I only handle the pawn side though. After he found out about his illness, he decided not to tell his young daughter, to pretend he was on a business trip when he was actually hospitalized. He and his wife agreed to say they divorced if he passed away, to spare his daughter the pain.
I suddenly remembered being abruptly told about my parents' divorce when my father never returned from his business trip.
so that was it.
My father's kind face came to mind, and tears started to flow.
My brother hesitated to give the rings after making them, afraid of binding their lives after his death. However, his wife wanted hers, so he gave it to her, but decided not to give you yours. He didn't want it to be a burden if a new father came into your life. But he did ask me to give you this ring if I ever met you when you were grown.
I couldn't stop crying. I didn't know that. The love from my father and mother. Being without a father meant I was less loved than children with both parents. I had thought like that. But I was wrong. I was cherished so much. They must have thought and worried so much for my sake.
My brother was quite a renowned craftsman in certain circles, so the ring is quite valuable. What you do with it is up to you. That was his wish.
The ring I came with had returned to me as two.
Please, take your time to think about it.
I thanked him and left the pawn shop. What should I do next? How should I protect Mina? Though I thought about that, I could no longer consider parting with those two rings. 20 years after that.
Mina, this is the most precious thing to me other than you.
I gave my mother's heirloom ring to Mina, who would have a wedding the following day.
It's a beautiful ring. But isn't this grandma's heirloom? Is it really okay?
She asked, surprised.
Yes. It's a precious charm that will protect you. This ring changed my life significantly. I'm sure it will protect you too.
I see. Thank you. Then someday, I'll pass it on to my daughter too.
She replied with her unwavering smile. Since then, I thought of ways to protect Mina without selling the rings.
I can't change careers for a better salary with just a high school diploma.
I thought like that, but I broke out of my shell and desperately job hunted. As a result, my enthusiasm was recognized, and I switched to a general position in a company. I managed to send Mina all the way through college. And now, the two rings are here with Mina and me. This love contained in these two rings will continue to be passed down. That's what I believe.